Hey, what's up, Unbroken Nation? Hope that you're doing well wherever you are in the world today. I'm very excited to be back with you with another episode with my guest, Agi Keramidas, who is the host of the Personal Development Mastery podcast, and his mission is to influence and inspire people to stand out and take action towards the next level of their lives, which I'm all about. Agi, my friend, what is happening in your world today? How are you?
It's great to be here, Michael. It's a real pleasure. And what is happening in my world? Well, the previous hour of my day, I was interviewing you for my podcast. So that is a really amazing thing. So I'll keep my answer short.
Yeah, I love it. And this is such a fun conversation for me. I'm very curious about you and your experience. Now, I know you spent a very long time as a dentist, and what I'd love to do here is just for context to go
Yeah.
back a little bit, because people are probably gonna be like, "Wow, how the hell did you go from a dentist to podcast guy?" So what I'd really love to start is, why don't you start at the beginning? Tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Yes, sure. So I'll use a short version. I think there have been two major switching points or turning points in my life that make a big difference. One was when I moved from Greece, my home country, to England, and that was something that I did in my mid 30s. Despite the external success that I had, I felt a void inside me, something was not right, and eventually I had a calling about England, and it took me a while battling with fears and insecurities, but I left everything behind at some point. My job, my family, friends, fiance, and started a new life in the UK. So that was 11 years ago, and that really started changing things very much as a person. I became much more uh, able to rely on myself because I was just on my own in a different country, and that changed me very much. Uh, I will take a little pause here, Michael, in case you want to ask me anything. But before I tell you about how do I went from dentist to the podcasting, which
Yeah,
is
no, man, go for it. We're in it with you.
so yes, at some point, 5, 6 years ago, I had just finished a master's degree, and instead of feeling my really motivated, wanting to pursue this kind of new knowledge and being able to do some really high tech stuff that I was learning, I felt really empty. I felt like I didn't know what was wrong. That's what I thought, that there is something wrong with me. But that led me to start looking for the answers inside myself. So I call it my personal development journey, which I got some books. I got a big factor of my change was Tony Robbins. And actually, when I went to his event in 2017, uh, that was when everything changed for me in terms of how I was looking at myself. And I will explain what I mean by that, because all my life until that day, actually, because there was a major change that happened in a day. All my life until then, I was a very closed person and introvert, very shy, very uncomfortable in social situations. I would always stand on the corner and only speak with people I knew. And when I went to that event, I realized beyond any doubt that this was not who I was. All the time, all along, I had believed that this is who I am. I'm just a shy person. But it was at that time that I realized that it was a behavior. It was not who I was. It was something kept on doing habitually. And that was because of a limiting belief that I had that I'd never realized or articulated before, but it became very clear to me on that day. And that limiting belief was like a little voice playing at the back of my head. And it was telling me that, Agi, people are not interested in what you have to say. And it was on that day, on that occasion, that became so clear to me. And of course, I realized that if I carried on having this limiting belief, I projected, and that's how what Tony Robbins does in that event. It's brilliant. Projects your life into the future if nothing changes, and then you look back at your life and you realize that this was such a waste. I could have done so many things and I didn't, and that was what really triggered my radical change. Then I went into more and more personal development, coaching, all these sorts of things. And very quickly I went from, and I mean, in literally a few months, I did my first public speech from, so I turned things around. And not about a year afterwards, I started my first podcast. So uh, that was I'm trying to keep it concise for the moment. But if you want me to, if you want to discuss on any of that in more detail,
Yeah,
tell me.
so you can go as long as you'd like. This is our opportunity
Sure.
to go deep and hopefully bring a lesson to folks listening. The thing that came to mind for me immediately, what I thought was really interesting is, so here you are in this position that 11 years ago, you decide to pick up your life and go to the UK, face
Mhm.
this fear, step into this like realization you want to have, and yet you were still kind of stuck. What I think happens for people all the time is they get to this place where they take a change, they make a change, and they expect things to be totally different, but then they're actually really not, because they're still consumed with not only their limiting beliefs but also the behaviors and the circumstances that they put themselves in. What I'm curious about is, so I know right now there are people listening, and I've had this experience myself, where we face a fear, we make that decision, we go down this path of doing the thing we feel like we should do, and then yet we're still stuck. There's, you're 60% into whatever's it you're trying to figure out. What was happening in that space between that move and that moment at Tony Robbins where you still felt kind of like this emptiness that you were trying to find and discover?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that inevitably we will get stuck in a way further down the line because we don't know what's going to happen. So we do progress, we face a fear, and that's how it felt to me. And then I moved to the UK. I did the things. I really increased my confidence. But and what you were saying earlier made me think that no matter what is happening on the outside of your life, your external circumstances, the person that you are inside is really what's going to determine how you perceive all that outside. So you can be in the best place in the world, but if you feel bad inside of you, it's not going to make that place look the way that it is. So moving to a different country or doing something different uh, will not prevent you from getting stuck again. If there is something inside of you, and there is usually, if not always, there is something inside you that causes that. So you just take that to a different setting, but at some point you will need to face it. So in answer to your question, I'm not sure if it was the same thing that um, caused me to be stuck one the first time and the second. I think it to some extent it was the same thing, and that maybe is that deeper need to live a fulfilled life and really do, fulfill your potential and do the most with the time that you're given. uh, so yeah, I went on a nice high, getting unstuck after that, moving to the UK. And then at some point, I realized that this on its own was not enough. There was much more for me to do and be in order to, feel that sense of fulfillment or feeling unstuck or moving on. So, yeah.
Yeah, here's what I think about quite frequently. Fulfillment to me feels like the ultimate accomplishment. And what I mean by that is you can chase so many things like money, career, trying to have the best podcast in the world, whatever, right? And in that, still feel empty, feel
Mm,
narrow, feel unaccepted by yourself first and foremost. And that ultimately, I think, becomes a reflection of the outside world.
yeah.
What I think people often struggle with is they're always seeking their purpose. I don't particularly think about life like that. I don't think about seeking my purpose. I instead think about seeking fulfillment. And I love that you use that word a couple of times. So when you're in this transition and you're trying to figure out what's next, was there was there a light bulb moment? Was there something that really struck a chord with you where you're like, this is the thing I need to do? Like, how do you arrive to this place where you start chasing fulfillment even within the chaos of trying to figure out who you are?
I think what you said about the purpose, that's, and I went into, I made the same mistake myself, and I think many people do that. They're trying to find it, but it's nowhere to be found. It's not waiting for you to find it. You have to create it. That's how I see the purpose and the path of our life. Really, we have to create, like, or compose it like a song, like a poem. It's not there and you look around to find it, and the only way to create and compose it like that is by taking the next thing. So it's similar to what you said, that it's not like I knew that 5 or 10 years from now I would really want to be that or have that vision of my life as such. But I did the next step. I took the next step that seemed to be congruent with what I was feeling. And I'm using feeling more than thinking. Of course, they are in combination, but that's how I see it. It's the next step, and then the next step, and then the next step. Of course, it helps to have some kind of a direction to where you want to go, but I don't think we're not in control really of where we will reach that, or the circumstances of our life will change that for us. So I think the purpose or the fulfillment, all this will be found by the next thing and then the next thing, and keeping on. It is a journey. It's not one point, one destination that you I can say, okay, now I'm fulfilled. It's it's it is ongoing. It's like going to the gym. You can't exercise once and be fit for life. You have to carry on. The moment you stop and you go back on yourself, the fulfillment goes away. If you start doing things that do not are not aligned with your true self, who you truly are, what it is that you truly want to do and be and share.
I think about you said something about control, and I believe this. You can control all of your actions every single day, but you cannot control the outcome of those actions. And it's this weird juxtaposition because I believe that, like, I'm going to accomplish every goal in my life. I believe that. Like, I really do, and so I move that way every day.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? But I also go, well, that's not going to stop me. And so I keep moving forward. And I think that's really important. You mentioned something about
Mm.
feeling like you're doing this thing. And as Tony being one of my mentors as well, and hearing him go, if you're in your head, you're dead. I love that so much because it's true. I talk about all the time on this show that your brain is only about survival. It is not about thriving. It does not care. So how did you start to tap into your emotions, your feelings about the choices and decisions that you were making, to use those as anchors and leverage points to start to have the momentum in this journey?
Thank you for asking. It's actually, in many ways, I think I was very blessed. Because when I was in the university studying dentistry in Greece a long time ago, my best friend at that time, who was studying as well, felt a very strong calling inside of him, a spiritual calling. And eventually he dropped out of dental school and went to Siberia and became a shaman. And then he was traveling around the world. And seeing that and interacting with him once he started his spiritual journey made me very much more open to all those things that my mind, or the mind generally, can't explain. So I was blessed in such a way that I had this influence of what it is to feel your intuition, or to be in your heart. So that is like the, let's say, the foundation in a way that allowed me to do that. But if I move it further on, the feeling versus thinking for me has a very different vibration, or a very different color, if you want. What the feeling is something that even thinking about it makes you smile. It's something that even now my hands kind of without wanting, I do this motion up, going upwards. It's like something is emerging, or flowering inside of you, something beautiful. It doesn't matter if it's scary or not, or if the mind will say that it's scary, but it is something coming from inside, going upwards. And it, for me, the big characteristic that it has is that it makes me smile. So I know that something is coming from my intuition, my heart, because it makes me feel good. If it's coming the other way around from my head, it's usually when it's fearful. It's the what if, is the let's look at it logically, and who are you to do this? These are it's completely opposite, and I know it's very, very convincing. And many of us, or most of us, use that instead of the intuition. But it's really not going to lead to fulfillment. It's going to lead to survival, to safety, to let's do what we know of doing, because anything outside of that, it's a risk, it's a danger. And but yeah, it's that feeling of joy, of that smiling that comes, no matter what the message is. That's how I know that it's coming from a deeper part of me, and not my brain.
That's a really beautiful way to phrase that. I mean, and I think about energy in that too, right? I mean, if you're operating through this scope of, woe is me, or sorrow, or the things that you're doing are feeling burdensome, you're not going to want to do them. You're not going to
Mm.
have the energy, the effort, the passion, even though I'm going to use that word, to want to accomplish life, to have the goals, to be the person that you're capable of being. And I think there's so much validity in just recognizing how inside your body you feel in that moment as you're doing things. And I think often we're so disconnected from that. Was there, how do I want to phrase this? Because I want to make this to be valuable for people. When you were in this process of starting to shift into operating through feeling,
Mhm.
outside of just simply like noticing, am I smiling, is there joy, were there certain things that you were pushing yourself into to do in order to have that response? Was there kind of a pendulum swing from, okay, I'm going to do this even though it's painful, but it makes me feel good about myself? Like, what was the process of really being able, from an actionable standpoint, to step into those things?
Yeah. Uh, the first thing that comes to mind was the fact that I was discontent where I was. I was not happy where I was. So that on its own is a very good motivator to take some uncomfortable action. Uh, for me, it was. There is an element, and it's not easy to describe it, but it is an element of belief or trust, or I will reluctantly use the word faith, because for some people it might have a different connotation. But let's say belief and trust that this is the right thing to do. So that combined to the pain of the situation that I was in, propelled me to action. I did take the uncomfortable action, knowing that I was not well where I was there. I had realized I was unhappy. I was drinking too much. I was smoking at that time. I was leading a road to bad outcomes. So I knew I needed to change. So I had this inspired idea. It was scary as hell, leaving everything I knew and going to another country on my own. But the having the belief that this is right, because otherwise I will be stuck here where I am, and I'm only going to go even down, more down. Motivated me to take the action, and I found out that once I started taking these kinds of actions that were coming from my intuition, I had support, shall we say, or there were things happening that were helping me. People coming my way, or conversations having, the synchronicities. So it facilitated the process. But yes, of course, the the fear was there. The fact that I had to battle with that voice was there, and I think that's something we need to do. I don't think it ever goes away, does it? It's always there, and you have to keep on ignoring it, or letting it say what it has to say, but you're doing what you have to do in spite of that voice. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think sometimes even like I will go into the dark parts of myself in the moments of which I'm like, I don't want to do that thing because
Mm,
I need something to pull me through. Right.
mm,
And there's these moments because like it is about feeling an emotion. And I would tell people to tread lightly with stepping into the darkness because that can overtake you. But I have these moments, Agi, where I am looking at this thing that I need to do or accomplish, and it's midnight, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it's a Sunday at 1 in the afternoon. It doesn't matter when it is, but there's this moment that comes where I'm like, I don't want to do this.
mm,
And I remind myself, I'm tired, I'm lethargic, it's chaotic. And I start to get into that dark space where that dark space is actually negative in a way that's pulling me down. And what's interesting is in that moment, it's like battling dark against dark, which I know is a weird narrative, but I go, every motherfucker who ever told you weren't going to be shit is waiting for you not to do anything right now. And that is a feeling also that I pull out because I think just as much as you can pull into the light side of things, right? And I don't know if you have this experience too, but I'm really curious. As much as you can pull into the light and the joy and the happiness, like I really truly believe this. And this is me, and I don't know if you'll agree, but I really truly believe sometimes you got to kick your own fucking ass and be like, go to work because these motherfuckers are waiting for you to fail.
absolutely. What I believe is that each of us will find different things that motivate them. So I'm not sure if there is one universal motivator. For different people, it could be a different thing. But certainly proving something to yourself and to others, and maybe to yourself even more, is a great motivator to get your ass up and do those things that you want to do, despite the fear, despite if you're not feeling like it, or anything else. But I think thinking about it the way you asked me the question, I think each of us will find slightly different things that will really motivate them when it's really difficult and you can't break through. And that's probably related to their own background and what it is that the reason why they want to step on the other side, and all those things. I think
I
it could vary.
Absolutely. And that's why I don't think there's a right or wrong here. And that's why I also
Mm.
said tread lightly with the darkness, because it can take you to the wrong place if you're not paying attention. One of the things I'm curious about here is, looking at the trajectory of your life, and going back to talking about these steps and these actions and just kind of the continuation of the moving forward. I think one of the things, unfortunately, that I see happen so very commonly is that people will say, I'm setting this goal,
Mhm.
and it's a big goal. And I'm all about setting the big goal. Set the goal bigger than you even think you can set it right now. Go hard, right? And they'll go day 1, day 2. All right, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll get back to it. Oh, well, there's things. Life is happening. Blah, kids, family, blah, 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 right? How do you continue the momentum? Because I feel like those are, if I were to pinpoint the number one way that people let themselves down, it's by giving up on their dreams because it got too difficult.
Mhm.
How have you been able to either cultivate momentum or build momentum, or even in those moments, like what is the process for that? Because I see the transition and the trajectory of your life. It obviously didn't happen overnight. I'm sure you're probably nowhere close to where you're trying to go and what's next, but how do you continue to have that carry through to push you towards what you want to accomplish?
Yes. So, first of all, with when you have a very big goal, as you mentioned, and you have set that, if you just leave it like that and then try to take the next little step in order to reach there, that's probably not going to work. For me, it wouldn't work like that. I would need to kind of reverse engineer that goal and see if that is really what I want. Where do I need to be in a year's time from now, for example, to reach that, or in 6 months, or in 3 months, or next week? So chunking it down into smaller things really helps with the momentum, because you have a more clear direction and it's broken down, and you know that if I have completed this chunk of the goal over this month, then I know that my next one is this, and so on. If I can give you an example, I ran the London Marathon a few months ago, and that was the first time I ran a marathon. If I started just by thinking, how will I run those 26 miles, the motivation would be very difficult to maintain. But I had broken it down reversely into, I need to do this a month before, to be able to do this a month before, this 2 months before. So I was working towards smaller goals or interim goals, which are much more achievable. So doing like 10 kilometers as is a much more approachable and goal than saying I'm going to do the marathon. Yes, you will do the marathon eventually, but you have to build yourself up to this. So I think that is the key to momentum, to one of the keys. There are many, but that is one of the keys, to have smaller sub goals that will lead to that big goal. And rather than looking at the very end of what you are wanting to achieve, look a little bit closer. What is my next step? Especially when on those days when you really don't feel like you want to practice or work or run or get out of bed, or that's really the time that it has helped me to keep up the momentum. And if one other thing that comes to mind as an action, if you want, because momentum is very easy to lose. It's pretty much a daily process. But if for any reason, because things will happen and life will happen, you get out of the momentum and you don't do what you wanted to do for one day, make sure 100% that there won't be a second day that you will not do the actions that you have set yourself to do. Because if it's easier, it's get back on the horse as soon as you can. At the moment that 2, 3, 4 days pass, then you might as well start over because your momentum will have dropped to zero. I don't know if you agree with that, but for me, these are things that I personally do, and they have helped me to maintain the momentum. And after a point, it just goes on. When you pick enough, it goes faster and faster. You don't really need to do that much effort.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that chunking out goals is such an important part of the experience because, people ask me all the time, well, how have you written so many books? How do you have podcasts and stuff like that? I'm like, I started at zero. I started at one word on one page every single day. And then what happened was I just started looking at, okay, what is the time frame on this goal? Right? Some things have a time frame, some things don't. It really just depends. You've got to figure that out. But the one thing I made the decision about was every single day it's going to get my energy. Every single day it's going to get my effort. And that meant every day. And when I wrote my first book, it literally was every day for months and months, writing, reading, rewriting, editing, learning how to publish, like the whole nine. And then that's held true in other things. And right now I'm in the midst of some really big goals that require daily energy. And Grant Cardone, who was one of my mentors, who I'm super fortunate to have in my life, he told me one time, he was like, look, man, if you want to have something, you're going to have to give something up. And that just, I think about that against everything that I want to accomplish in my life. Am I going to have to give up Netflix? Am I going to have to give up going to the bar with friends? Am I going to have to give up an identity about what I'm worth? Am I going to have to give up a past that is hindering me from my future? And so there's so much to this idea, but these goals, this identity, this life you want to create, like it's right here for you. Right? It's not going to be easy. It's going to be tedious. Like I promise you, it's probably more tedious than it is enthralling. Right? But those moments where you hit these massive accomplishments, and I'll say this for certain, there's about 6.2 seconds of pure bliss. And then you go into the next thing, right? How did you feel when you crossed the finish line at the marathon?
Well, the accomplishment, the sense of accomplishment was incredible. I burst into tears when I finished because there were tears of gratitude, really, that I was able to experience that. All the thing. It's in terms of what you say about the 6 seconds, it probably lasted me a little bit longer than that, but certainly, yeah, of course, I think it's in our human nature to then look for what's next. Otherwise, it's what we were saying earlier. It's not like you reach it and you say, now I am successful, period, and now I can sit down and watch Netflix all day and do nothing. It's not like that. There will be the next thing, and it's as you said, it's not easy, or it might not be easy, but that's what makes things meaningful. Easy and meaningful are rarely on the same sentence, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And, and again, like, please, like, people will always misconstrue things that are said. We're not talking about like, don't enjoy your life. You want to watch Netflix? Fine, do it. Like, who cares? That's not the point. The point is like, are you heading in a direction? Are you trying to make betterment of your life? Because I promise you, there's going to be moments where I'm going to play video games all day. It's going to happen because I need it, because it's a disconnect, because it's a part of my experience. But I also say, if I committed myself to this thing, I got to do it before I can play video games. I got to do it before I can go to dinner with my friends. Sometimes I'm late, man. They're like, dude, you're an hour late. I'm like, I had to do the thing because my commitment to me always comes first. Because you've probably experienced this. You'll be at the dinner, at the bar, at the event, at the thing, and the only yoga class, you're like, the only thing you're thinking about is the thing you didn't do yet. Right? And so you got to be able to do that thing and hold yourself accountable. Agi, my friend, this conversation's been absolutely incredible. Thank you for being here. Before I ask you my last question, can you tell everyone where they can find you?
Absolutely, yes. Well, my podcast is. I would invite people that enjoyed this conversation, to listen to the podcast Personal Development Mastery, which you can find everywhere on Apple, Spotify, and so on.
Amazing. And of course, we'll put the links in the show notes and all of those things. My friend, my last question for you is, what does it mean to you to be unbroken?
I would say to be myself, to be who I truly am. It's it's an interesting word, unbroken, but for me it implies that something that is true inside of you is lost or is broken. So being unbroken is really not having pieces inside you that don't belong to who you truly are. So yeah, being your true self in every sense of the word.
I love it, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. Unbroken Nation, thank you for listening. Please, of course, like, subscribe, comment, share, tell a friend. And until next time, my friends, be unbroken. I'll see ya.